be yourself. Just be yourself. Just be yourself. Who are you trying to be? Who are you trying to fool? Just be yourself. Just be yourself, man. Anyway. Hey guys, how's it going? Today I just figured that I'd take a second to talk a little bit more about the values poster from the last video. More specifically, I wanted to talk about the people who I decided to quote on there and kind of just get into like why I chose them specifically. Off the bat, I do want to say this isn't meant to be like a historical like evaluation of any of these people's lives. I'm no historian, so this is just kind of me talking about like why I like these people and kind of what I learned from them. But yeah, that being said, I am going to leave some of the sources that helped me like learn about them in the description if anybody is interested. But yeah, I'll try to be brief, I'll try to be quick, and yeah, let's get into it. Also, this mic doesn't work, it's not plugged in. I just wanted to have a mic, so there's that. But yeah, anyway. Okay, so starting out, we got James Baldwin. So I haven't read any of his books yet, actually, which is kind of goofy because it's like,
he's a writer, why are you talking about him if you haven't read them?
But I have watched like his speeches, some of his interviews, and just based on that, I feel like he was a really witty, confident, just like person with class, you know what I mean? I just feel like he was somebody who carried himself with a lot of dignity, and yeah, he was an intellectual, but he didn't use his like intellectual prowess to like belittle anybody. He was using it kind of constructively, and he was using it to have conversations that were ultimately meant to help people. So also one of the characters in the French Dispatch was based on him, so that's also kind of cool. But yeah. Okay, next up we got the GOAT, also known as Malcolm X.
Now, you have a nice poster of Malcolm X on your wall. I heard the brother speak.
So the thing with Malcolm X, I actually didn't learn about Malcolm X until pretty recently, which is just nuts. I think I remember hearing about him like in middle school because I knew that Denzel played him in the movie, and I remember thinking like Denzel doesn't look like him. But besides that, that's all I had for a very long time, which is unfortunate. But that being said, after having learned more about him and like what he did and who he was, the thing with Malcolm X, I feel like, is just like he was somebody who never let himself be defined by his past or like his current situation after a certain point, you know what I mean? So I feel like he was somebody who was and I guess in his prime, he was somebody who was constantly evolving and learning. He was somebody who was always learning and trying to grow. And I feel like that's something that we could all do, and that would be helpful for all of us. So, yeah.
But just a very, very smart man. Very, very, very smart man. And basically,
Okay, so next is Yuri Kochiyama. So this is somebody who I actually just randomly came across one day when I was like researching some of the other people on this list. And it's not crazy that I've never heard of her, but it's still like, dang, that kind of stinks. But yeah, with Yuri Kochiyama, what's cool to me is my dad is black, my mom is Japanese, and because of that, I feel like I have kind of like I feel a personal connection to like what she was doing and who she was. But past that, just the fact that she was somebody who practiced solidarity, and she wasn't only concerned with the problems that affected like her and her, like in her race in particular. She was actually like concerned with just the oppression that everybody was going through. And she was kind of like a symbol of unity in that way. Plus, she was friends with Malcolm X. That's pretty cool too, I think. Next up is Dolores Huerta. So originally, I was debating between picking her and Cesar Chavez. But I ultimately ended up going with her just because I feel like even though they were doing like really similar work, and then they were also doing like their own things outside of that. I feel like with Dolores Huerta, she had to work just a little bit harder because she was a woman and because of the gender roles and like the climate at the time, especially at that time. She had to work harder to get to the leadership position that she ultimately ended up in. And because of that, I think that kind of shows how committed she was, because she was willing to push past like all of those barriers just so that she could kind of advocate for the people and do what she believed was right. and necessary. And she's still doing stuff today, and she's like in her 90s. So it's an icon living right there.
¿Se puede?
Okay, next up we got Thich Nhat Hanh. So this is actually somebody who I don't know a ton about, to be honest. But I did want to include somebody who has like a focus on mindfulness. So the reason I went with him and not somebody else is just I feel like he was somebody who had to actually practice what he preached. And I say that because you can say if you live to love, you'll love to live. But like if somebody's being mean to you in that moment, it's really difficult to remember that and to stay grounded in that, I guess you could say. So with him, he's got a whole war going on outside, and he's still just trying to meditate and like find his peace. So yeah, with him, I feel like he was somebody who actually was actively tested throughout his life, and he was able to pass most of those tests, I would say, it seems like. But yeah, I gotta get back into meditation, but mindfulness is very important. So next up is Miss Maya Angelou. So the way I see it with Maya Angelou, I feel like she was somebody who actually lived her life. And I guess you could say that about all of the people on this list, but I feel like with her, she was somebody who went through a lot of hardship and was still able to come out the other side and make something productive out of it. Like throughout all the stages of her life, she kept on doing that. And on top of that, I feel like the fact that she was also just like naturally like gifted or talented, and she was disciplined with it, that just added to her ability to kind of take all experiences, good and bad, and translate them into productive means that could continue to propel her forward. And then it just became like a positive input-output cycle of creation and love. So, you know what I'm saying? I don't know. I think she's pretty cool. Okay, so it turns out that the camera memory got full, so it wasn't recording for a big chunk of this, but yeah, we'll keep going. So next up we got Mr. Fred Rogers. I feel like we really need a Mr. Rogers now, like actually. And I say that because he was somebody who really cared about the kids. And kids are like the most important and vulnerable segment of the population. And you know, they need to be like protected, and like it's hard to be a kid. Like you need that guidance and like stability. And I feel like a lot of kids just don't have that because there's no focus on it. You know what I mean? Like the people who are just like suck, they're like that more often than not because of what happened when they were kids. You know what I mean? Like when you're a kid, you're a kid. So I feel like you can stop a lot of cycles of like trauma and harm, obviously. And that starts like in childhood. So, and for whatever reason that doesn't happen. But yeah, back to Mr. Rogers. He was just somebody who was actually committed to helping kids. And he treated them like people, and he wasn't weird. He was just like genuine and just loving. And he was like truly just a kind person, which you just don't see a lot of just like in general, which is just too bad. But yeah, this dude was a gem of a person. Next is George Carlin. So with George Carlin, I wouldn't even say he's like the funniest comedian ever, in my opinion, but I feel like he's one of the most introspective and just like thought-provoking ones that I've seen. And I say that because he was someone who later on, when he got older, just like started just telling the truth and just like saying things that nobody else seemed to be willing to say. And to me, it seems like a lot of the like get out of the matrix, rich people are bad stuff. I wouldn't say that it like started with him, but I would say that it's connected to a lot of his like philosophy and his sentiment. He also played Rufus in Bill and Ted.
Rufus! Listen to this dude, Rufus. He knows what he's talking about.
The next person on the list is somebody else who I only recently learned about, and that's Pauli Murray. I feel like Pauli Murray was one of the chillest people on this list. Like they were just somebody who you could just like sit down and hang out with and talk to. That's how I see it. But again, this is somebody who had to push through a lot of like societal barriers of the time, like racism and sexism, in order to get to where they got. And in terms of like a leadership role and a position of influence. And like I said before, that's something that just shows how hard they were willing to work and what kind of resolve they had in order to make a difference and to help people. So that's really admirable to me. And I'm not in the law at all, but it just seems to me like a lot of the legal precedent that's like in place now wouldn't have been possible without this one person, which is like by itself just kind of wild. So yeah. Okay, and last on the list we got Nelson Mandela. So outside of the fact that he was a lawyer and he went to jail for a really long time, and when he got out he got to be the president, I don't really know a ton about Nelson Mandela's like personal life, but just based on that alone and the fact that he was able to kind of give up so much of his time in order to do what he knew was the right thing. And he didn't know he was going to get out. He could have died in jail for all he knew. Like that just is the embodiment of courage and just like conviction to me. I feel like to me his story represents hope, and just like the fact that change is possible. It just takes time and just a lot of hard work, but we can get there, and I think we might. So that was my hopefully not super long video about some of the people who I look up to and the people that I decided to quote on the poster. I think it's crazy because I don't remember learning about like a majority of these people. Like I might not have been paying attention, because I feel like even with their faults, these are all people that we can look up to and see what's possible and just like learn from. I think that they represented excellence, and they're just examples of like how we can all make a difference. So, but yeah, that's it. Thank you for listening to me talk. Thank you for watching me speak into a microphone that's not even functioning. And yeah, until next time, bye.